What happens when Hollywood's most legendary actor faces off against daytime television's most provocative panel? You won't believe what unfolds when Harrison Ford sits down with The View hosts for what was supposed to be a lighthearted promotional appearance. This explosive encounter will challenge everything you thought you knew about celebrity interviews and the boundaries of respectful discourse. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button and drop a comment, because you're not going to believe what happens next. Last night's episode of The View promised a celebration of cinematic excellence as Harrison Ford arrived to promote his latest project. The 81-year-old icon, known worldwide as Han Solo and Indiana Jones, entered the studio with his trademark reserved demeanor, expecting the usual questions about his career and upcoming films. What he encountered instead was a tense and confrontational environment that would test even his legendary patience. The trouble began almost immediately after Ford settled into his chair. Joy Behar, never one to shy away from controversy, opened with what seemed like a simple question about Hollywood's current climate. Harrison, you've been in this business for decades. What do you think about all these young actors today who seem to think they know everything about politics and social issues? Ford, maintaining his composure, answered diplomatically, "Well, I think every generation has something to contribute. Young people today are more informed and engaged than ever before." His measured response aimed to avoid potential landmines, but Whoopi Goldberg wasn't satisfied with diplomacy. Leaning forward, she shifted the energy in the room. "Come on, Harrison. You can't tell me you don't have opinions about celebrities who use their platforms irresponsibly. You've always been private about your political views, but surely you have thoughts about actors who tweet about causes they barely understand?" The camera captured Ford's subtle shift, his jaw tightening as he processed the loaded question. "I believe in everyone's right to express their views," he replied. "That's what democracy is about. I may not agree with everyone, but I respect their right to speak." Stasaran jumped in, offering what seemed supportive but carried a challenge. "That's very diplomatic, Harrison. But don't you think fame comes with responsibility? When you have millions of followers, shouldn't you be more careful about what you say?" Ford's response revealed a first crack in his diplomatic facade. "Responsibility cuts both ways, Sarah. The media has a responsibility to report accurately, and talk show hosts have a responsibility to treat their guests with respect." His subtle emphasis on talk show hosts didn't go unnoticed. Cine host, sensing an opportunity, pressed harder. "Speaking of responsibility, Harrison, you've worked with some directors who have been accused of misconduct over the years. Roman Polanski, for instance. How do you reconcile working with people who have controversial pasts?" The question hung like a challenge. Ford's expression hardened. "It's important to separate art from the artist. I've worked with hundreds of people over my career and cannot be held responsible for every personal decision they've made. But surely you must draw a line somewhere." Sonny leaned in, voice sharp. "I mean, when you know someone has done terrible things, doesn't continuing to work with them send a message about what you're willing to tolerate?" Ford's patience was fraying, yet he stayed composed. "You're oversimplifying a very complex issue, Sonny. I've always worked with talented professionals. What they do in their private lives is between them and the justice system." Joy Behar, unwilling to let the moment pass, added fuel. "That's a convenient position, Harrison. It lets you work with whoever you want while avoiding moral responsibility." Ford's tone sharpened. "I don't think it's convenient, Joy. I think it's realistic. If we start boycotting everyone who's ever made a mistake or been accused of something, we'll have no one left to work with." Whoopi, sensing Ford's defensiveness, pivoted to another provocative topic. "Let's talk about your environmental activism. Harrison, you've been vocal about climate change, flying around the world to speak at conferences, yet you own several planes and have a significant carbon footprint. Don't you see the hypocrisy?" Ford's response was immediate and measured. Calling it hypocrisy is unfair. I use my platform to raise awareness about important issues. Yes, that requires travel. But I also support numerous environmental organizations and try to offset my carbon footprint whenever possible. Behar interjected with a smirk. But actions speak louder than words, don't they? You're telling people to reduce their footprint while flying private jets? That seems hypocritical. The tension in the studio was palpable. Ford's composure was beginning to crack as he realized this was not going to be the promotional interview he expected. I think you're mischaracterizing my position. Joy, I've never told anyone to reduce their footprint while ignoring my own. I've been transparent about my environmental impact and my efforts to address it. Sunny, smelling blood in the water, pushed harder. But transparency doesn't necessarily equal action, does it, Harrison? Sunny pressed, her tone sharp. You talk about offsetting your carbon footprint, but carbon offsets have been criticized as essentially meaningless. You're basically paying money to feel better about polluting. Ford's voice rose slightly, betraying his growing frustration. I think you're being deliberately obtuse. Sunny, carbon offsets are one tool among many, and they're certainly better than doing nothing at all. Are they, though? She shot back. Or are they just a way for wealthy people to buy their way out of responsibility for their environmental impact? The attack now felt coordinated, each host taking turns chipping at Ford's composure. His response carried a warning edge. I think this line of questioning is becoming deliberately confrontational, and I'm not sure what you're trying to accomplish here. Sarah, perhaps sensing the tension spiraling, tried to redirect. Harrison, let's talk about your upcoming project. What can you tell us about? But Whoopi wasn't ready to relent. No, I think this is important. Harrison came here to promote his work, but he's also a public figure who takes political positions. That makes his consistency fair game for discussion. Ford's jaw clenched as he processed the implied threat. The atmosphere had shifted from a promotional interview to something resembling an interrogation, and everyone could feel the tension building toward an inevitable breaking point. The moment that pushed things over the edge came when Joy Behar ventured into more personal territory. Harrison, let's talk about your marriages. You've been married 3 times. That's not exactly a great track record for someone who's always playing the hero on screen. What does that say about your ability to commit long-term? The studio fell silent. Even the producers seemed to sense a line had been crossed. Ford's eyes narrowed, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Excuse me? My personal relationships are none of your business, Joy. Behar, with a cruel smile, pressed on. Well, they become our business when you sit here lecturing people about responsibility and consistency. If you can't maintain a marriage, how can we trust your judgment on climate change or Hollywood ethics? The comparison was so outrageous, so deliberately provocative, that Ford recoiled in his chair. That is completely inappropriate. Joy, my marriages have nothing to do with my environmental activism or professional opinions. Sensing Ford's anger piled on rather than de-escalated. But character matters, doesn't it, Harrison? You built your career playing characters with strong moral codes. Indiana Jones, Han Solo heroes. But in real life, you seem to struggle to live up to those standards. For the first time, Ford's composure visibly cracked. His voice rose. I never claimed to be perfect, Whoopi. I'm a human being who has made mistakes like everyone else. But attacking my personal relationships is completely out of line. Sunny, emboldened by his visible distress, went in for the kill. Exactly the point, Harrison. You present yourself as a moral authority, an environmental crusader. But your life tells a different story of multiple marriages. It's environmental hypocrisy, working with controversial directors. It paints a picture of someone who says one thing and does another. The calculated nature of the attack was now clear to everyone watching. This wasn't journalism or entertainment, it was a deliberate attempt to humiliate one of Hollywood's most respected figures Ford gripped the arms of his chair, fighting to maintain control. I think you're deliberately mischaracterizing my life and my positions to create conflict where none should exist. Sarah N., who had been relatively quiet, delivered what felt like the final blow. Harrison, speaking of personal relationships, there have been rumors about your behavior on set, not criminal, but difficult. Co-stars describe you as aloof, sometimes hostile. Is this the real Harrison Ford we're seeing right now? The question aimed to frame Ford's growing frustration as a deeper character. Flaw. His voice shook slightly, but remained firm. I think you're confusing professionalism with hostility, Sarah. I take my work seriously and expect the same from others. If that makes me difficult, so be it. Behar laughed mockingly. Oh, so now we're all supposed to admire your professionalism. The same professionalism that led you to work with directors who abused their power. The same professionalism that has you flying around in private jets while telling others to save the planet. Ford's patience hung by a thread. I think you're being deliberately dense. Joy, I've explained my positions clearly, okay? And you're choosing to misinterpret them for your own purposes. Our own purposes. Whoopi interjected with feigned innocence. Harrison, we're just asking questions. If you can't handle scrutiny of your public positions, maybe you shouldn't be taking those positions in the first place. The gaslighting was transparent, but effective. Ford's voice carried a warning tone. There's a difference between scrutiny and personal attacks. What you're doing right now is the latter. Sonny, sensing he was nearing a breaking point, pushed harder. Personal attacks, Harrison. Everything we've discussed, your marriages, environmental activism, work relationships, is public record. If you don't want these things discussed, maybe you shouldn't be a public figure, Sonny shot. The victim blaming was so blatant that Ford straightened slightly in his chair. I agreed to come here to talk about my work, not to be psychoanalyzed by people who don't know me. But we do know you, Harrison, Joy Behar said, a poisonous smile curling her lips. We know you from your public statements, your public actions, your public failures. And what we see is someone who talks a good game, but can't live up to his own standards. Ford's voice was strained with anger. I think this interview is over. But Whoopi wasn't done. Oh, so now you're going to run away. Just like you ran from your first 2 marriages. Just like you run from accountability for your environmental impact. The comparison was incendiary. Ford's face flushed with genuine anger. I'm not running away from anything, Whoopi. I'm choosing not to participate in a character assassination disguised as an interview. Sarah N., perhaps since in the moment had spiraled too far, tried a weak intervention. Harrison, maybe we've gotten off track. Let's talk about your new project. No, Sarah, Ford interrupted, his tone sharp. I think we've revealed exactly what this was meant to be. This wasn't an interview. It was an ambush. Sonny, unable to resist one final jab, leaned in. An ambush. Harrison, you're a public figure making millions off your reputation. That reputation is fair game for examination. If you can't handle that, maybe you should find a different career. The insult landed like a punch. Ford's demeanor shifted immediately. His voice dropped to a level everyone recognized as dangerous. I think you've forgotten who you're talking to, Sonny. Behar, either oblivious or daring, pressed harder. Oh, are we supposed to be intimidated by Harrison Ford? The guy who can't keep a marriage together and lectures us about the environment while flying around in private jets. Please. Ford's response carried the weight of finality. I think this conversation is over, because Whoopi wasn't finished. The conversation is over when we say it's over, Harrison. You agreed to be here, and you'll stay until we're done. The authoritarian tone pushed Ford past his limit. The reserved, diplomatic persona that had defined him for decades evaporated in an instant. He stood abruptly, the chair rolling back under him, eyes blazing with an intensity that reminded everyone why he had convincingly played action heroes for decades. You'll decide when I'm done. Who the hell do you think you are, Whoopi? The studio fell into stunned silence. This wasn't the Harrison Ford audiences knew it was raw, unfiltered fury. Whoopi, visibly taken aback, tried to regain control. Harrison, please sit down. We're in the middle of no. Ford's voice boomed, cutting across the studio. Several crew members flinched. I'm done with this charade. I'm done with all of you. He turned to face each host individually, voice dripping with contempt. Joy, attacking my personal relationships doesn't make you a journalist. It makes you a bully. Nothing more. Bahar, rattled, tried to defend herself. Harrison, we were just what? Ford cut her off, his laugh bitter. Entertaining people, not destroying them. You've forgotten that. You become so addicted to controversy, you'll attack anyone who sits in that chair. He turned to Sonny, voice darkening further. And you, Sonny, using your legal background to make personal attacks sound like cross-examinations. You think that makes you clever? It makes you pathetic. Sonny tried to interject. Harrison, if I would just, what? Ford shot back. Sit here and let you tear apart my life for your entertainment. I've been in this business for 50 years, and I've never been treated with such disrespect. Never. Sarah N., desperate, attempted one last olive branch. Harrison, maybe we can start over. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Ford's response was immediate, cutting, devastating. There's been no misunderstanding, Sarah. This was exactly what you all intended. You brought me here under false pretenses, and then you ambushed me. Well, congratulations. You got your confrontation. The studio fell into a heavy, suffocating silence. Even the producers seemed frozen, unsure whether to cut to commercial or let the showdown continue. Ford reached for his microphone, removing it with deliberate, controlled movements. His anger simmering beneath the surface. You know what the real tragedy is? He continued, voice steady but laced with intensity. I actually respect what this show used to represent a platform for women's voices, intelligent discussions about important issues. But you've turned it into a gladiator arena, Whoopi. Sensing the chaos, attempted one last show of authority. Harrison, you're overreacting. We ask tough questions of all our guests. That's what we do. Tough questions. Ford shot back, merciless. You asked about my marriages like they were criminal acts. You attacked my environmental activism, calling me a hypocrite. You questioned my character, my integrity, my career. Those aren't tough questions. They're character assassination. Place the microphone on the table with deliberate precision, the sound echoing like a punctuation mark in the tense studio. And the worst part? You did it all while pretending to be victims yourselves. Oh, we're just asking questions. Oh, he can't handle scrutiny. Bullies hiding behind a facade of journalism. Joy, unable to resist a final provocation, smirked. Harrison, if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. Ford's eyes narrowed, and his interruption cut like a knife. Joy, I've been in this kitchen a lot longer than you. I've handled more heat than you can imagine. But there's a difference between heat and poisoning. That's what you're serving here. He began walking toward the edge of the set. Every step controlled but purposeful, cameras following his every move. You want to know what I think about the current state of Hollywood? Shows like this are what's wrong with it. You've turned discourse into blood sport, forgetting there are real people behind these public personas. Sonny Host tried one last jab. You're making a mistake. This will follow you. Ford stopped, turned, and fixed her with a cold, final gaze. No, Sonny, the mistake was coming here in the first place, and the only thing that will follow me is the knowledge that I finally stood up to bullies hiding behind their platform for too long. He continued walking, then paused at the edge of the set, addressing the cameras directly. To anyone watching, I came here to talk about my work, to share stories from my career, to connect with fans who have supported me for decades. Instead, I was subjected to a coordinated attack designed to humiliate me for entertainment value. His voice carried the weight of finality. This is what passes for journalism, today's personal attacks, disguised as tough questions. Character assassination, disguised as accountability. And when you object, you're told you can't handle the heat. The studio remained frozen. Ford's gaze swept over the hosts. Well, I can handle the heat. What I can't handle is being treated with such fundamental disrespect by people who should know better. The View used to be better than this. You used to be better than this. With that, he turned and walked off the set, leaving behind stunned hosts and crew, who had just witnessed one of the most dramatic guest exits in daytime television history. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the silent aftermath. Whoopi attempted to regain control, calling for a commercial break. But the damage was done. Ford had exposed the show's tactics for what they were, doing it with a force and dignity that reminded everyone why he had been one of Hollywood's most respected figures for 5 decades. The confrontation was over, but its impact would reverberate far beyond the studio. A powerful reminder that even the most patient and professional individuals have limits. Harrison Ford had drawn a line in the sand, creating a moment that would define not only his appearance on The View, but the very nature of celebrity interviews in the modern media landscape.